Okay, as you can see, the Turbo Cub is in the garage. I was planning on doing some electrical work to this. All the grounds are complete and ready to go. I just need to run all the hots, get the fuse box wired in, and start on the Johnny bucket wiring, which I have right here. It's all stripped back, ready to go in for the most part. These are my hot leads. This was definitely a very interesting setup with the original switch, which I'll show in a second. But this basically had 4 hots and 4 grounds. As you can see on the end here, it splits off. And on this side here, it splits off for the hots. Then there was another set of wires exactly like this right here. So it had 2 hots coming in, and then it split off to having 4 hots. I believe basically the way the old switch had to be wired, that's the way they needed it. This harness here is the one that goes out to the actual bucket itself. So this end here goes to the switches. This end here with the weather pack connectors goes out to the actual Johnny bucket itself. I had the Johnny bucket working yesterday just to make sure everything was still good on it, nothing was seized. Everything is currently good on it. It's currently December 21st, 2024, and it's pretty cold out. That's why I'm not doing wiring at the moment. The Johnny bucket wiring, it's pretty much straightforward, lay it in place. All the wiring will be going down the left side of the machine when you're sitting on it. The right side has the exhaust. Yes, I do got ground wires here, but I don't really want to mix the ground wires with the positive wires. I might run the bucket wires down this side just because it'll be a little bit easier to where they have to connect up to the bucket. But I don't really want to run too many hot wires down this side. I'd rather try and keep all the hot wires to the left side of the machine over there. Like I said, what needs to be wired up still are the tail lights. Need to be wired in with the headlights to the switch. The backlight for the oil pressure gauge, and the wiring and the positive wire to the hour meter and voltage gauge. So all that needs to get wired in. I do need to drill 2 holes for the switches for the Johnny bucket. Most likely they'll be going right here, opposite to the headlights and glow plug, or grid heater. Technically that's what it is. Here's the switches that I will be using. I'll pull one out for an example. If I can get it one-handed. There we go. So it's just a standard momentary switch. So that will control the one direction. That will control the other direction. So obviously center is off. 4 wires, so you have a positive, negative, and then your other 2 that go out to the actual actuator on the bucket. And basically the way this is designed is it switches the positive and negative that go out to the actuator so you can get the up and down motion. And I have all the hardware right here. That's to mount the Johnny bucket frame to the actual machine and to actually put everything into place. As for the front of the machine, I do still have to cut the frame to put the brackets in place. That will get done soon as well. As soon as it gets a little bit warmer out where I can actually feel my hands without my fingers freezing, I'll get this done. Like I said, I was planning on doing it today, but it's just a little bit too cold out to do that. So, like I said, positive wires need to be done. Fuel pump is also included on that list, and the grid heater. So all that will get wired in place. We'll all get connected. Some stuff will have key on power. Some stuff will have constant power. The Johnny bucket will have constant power since it will be fused completely separate from everything else. It's going to be its own standalone harness separate from the actual machine. Everything else will be a mix of the original harness and a new harness I'm working on making for this machine. So when you click on the key, the fuel pump will run like it always has. It's actually currently wired up. This machine would start if I wanted to start it, but it is in desperate need of an oil change. And under here, we have this wire right here. This is currently going to the fuel pump. So this is a temporary line going to the fuel pump so I can move the machine around before. And then we have this wire right here, which is also a key on source. This will run the backlight for the oil pressure gauge, the hour meter, and the voltage gauge. So the backlight on the oil pressure will be lit all the time. Everything else for lights will be switched. And like I said, the grid heater will be fused separately, and it will have constant power, so you don't have to run the ignition, which runs the fuel pump, when you're running the grid heater. And the headlights will also be their own constant source as well. So that's pretty much it. I believe I only have 3 circuits on this machine: grid heater, primary ignition, and lights. So there will be 1 fuse holder left for something in the future. The future owner can decide if they want to run like a blinky light and they want to have it fused separately, or anything along those lines. They can do it. So there is a little tiny bit of room in there to modify later on down the road. Not much with that current fuse box, but for what I'm building here, I think it will work out perfectly fine. And yes, like I said, the hour meter will be hooked back up. The ground wire for it's already done. Just got to get in there and get the hot wires all taken care of. So the ignition power, it will be a 1 fuse. It will control the fuel pump, all the ignition power. The headlights will have their own fuse, and then the grid heater will have its own fuse. He had it wired up. He had a fuse going to the actual starter, which you don't need. He had fuses everywhere on this machine. It was really kind of complicated the way he had it wired. I'm making it more simple, so if something does happen, you have that fuse box right there. Then you'll have these fuses on the Johnny bucket right here. So those will be your only fuses. So you'll have technically 5 fuses, or sorry, 4 fuses, but there'll only be 3 in there, and then you'll have 1 standalone fuse for the Johnny bucket. So that's pretty much it for this right here. Let me show you the original switch. This right here is the original Johnny bucket switch. This is just a project box. As you can see, there's some wires in there. That's the other wire I no longer need, since I have that's already wired up to run 2 hots. I might as well use that harness there. No point running 2 separate harnesses, 2 separate fuses. So this way this worked. That was one direction. That was the other direction. Another direction. Another direction. You can see this was mounted to something at some point, but the machine this came off of, the Deutz Alice, was not. It was never mounted to that machine in particular. Better it would have been one direction, one direction, one direction, the other direction. Like pulling it back like that, you actually kind of operated that direction and sometimes hit this direction at the same time, and sometimes hit that direction. It was really confusing with this box, but this here will be included whenever I do sell the machine. I do have the booklet for Johnny Bucket as well, and I also have a second replacement lift ram for it as well. So that will all get included with this machine whenever it does get sold, hopefully in the spring. So anyways, like I said, that's pretty much it for this machine right now. My fingers are starting to freeze. I'm going to go back inside and warm back up. I also wanted to work on something else, but I think it's still a little too cold to do that as well. So anyways, that's pretty much it. Turbo Cub, slow but steady progress, just waiting on the weather at this point. The panels are ready to go back on. They're all painted, ready to go. Got all the hardware for all that. Got all the wires ready to go. Just a matter of putting ends on them and running them where they need to run. So I'll talk to them later. Please keep it redneck like always, and please subscribe and comment. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy Hanukkah. Bye for now.